to the Nevada Patriot Podcast with Matt Sadler.
Welcome back to the Nevada Patriot Podcast with Matt Sadler, airing on local radio in Pahrump, Rumble, YouTube, and 977fm.rocks. I know usually you viewers and listeners are normally listening to my point of view only on this talk show, but today I'm excited to chat with a special guest. As we know, election season's getting in gear, so it's time to get to know some of our strong candidates. Our guest today is no stranger to Southern Nevada, but is a new face on the political scene. In doing a lot of research and being sort of a political geek, I like to get to the crux of what makes a candidate tick. I like you, I want to know what they're all about. And I want authentic leadership. I think the nation deserves it, Nevada deserves it, most of all, you, the voter, the citizen, deserve it. Without further ado and further bloviating, I want to welcome United States Senate Republican candidate for Nevada, Stephanie Phillips. Welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me. I was looking forward to this.
Yes,
it'll be fun.
Finally, glad we could finally get it going. So now you've been a Southern Nevada resident and hardworking Nevadan for years. Tell our audience a little bit about your background.
So I've been in Las Vegas for 30 years. And I came from California, and before that, Southern Oregon. I grew up in the country, and I was born in Connecticut, actually. So I've kind of been a little bit all over. But I came to Las Vegas and was only meant to be here for 6 months. And I was going to go back to California, but then I loved the real estate business so much, I ended up staying. So here I am 30 years later and still loving my work. And I started my own company 18 years ago. And I've had that, and I started a nonprofit a couple of years ago, and that helps needy children. It's called Den Mothers, and that helps hungry kids. There's so many hungry kids in our valley, just in Las Vegas alone, and a lot of people don't realize how many food challenged homes there are. So I've really been involved in charities for decades, and I'm a mom. I have 2 kids. My daughter is 18. She just graduated high school. And my son is 21. He's going into his senior year of college. And he joined ROTC in college up there in Utah, and he joined the Utah Army Guard. And so he'll commission when he graduates, and he's going to go infantry and would like to be a part of the Special Forces. Right. So he'll be serving the country. But I got into this political thing during COVID, and I have not forgotten what they did to us when they told us we couldn't go to church and our kids couldn't go to school, and they wanted to mask us, and you had to take a jab in order to keep your job, and they called us non-essential and closed down all these small businesses. The small business, that's what makes this country and this state go around. We're the backbone of America, and for them to do that, but then you let all of the big box stores stay open. It was completely un-American and unconstitutional. And I said to myself right then, I was going to do something about it. And there's a ton more reasons why I'm running, but that's what ignited that fire in me to get involved in.
So you had been thinking about this for
a long time.
Some time before.
Oh, sure.
Before announcing. Well, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's usually a question I'll ask a candidate is kind of like the motivation behind why you're deciding to run.
Right.
And I think you answered that question before I got to it. So along those same lines, then what other challenges in the state kind of come to mind when you're thinking about your role as a U.S. Senator should you get elected? What would one of the first, you need to pick whatever you want, what would one of your first things on your agenda that you think you could realistically help get done?
You know, I go around the state and talk to a lot of voters, and I have a lot of people tell me healthcare. They want to have better healthcare and overhaul the healthcare system. And I was just talking about this yesterday on a show, and there is $70 billion of fraud that happens each year. We lose that much money, and on the federal level. And I'm thinking we should audit all of these things, crack down on that. I could do a lot with $70 billion. And people want the control and the power between the patient and the doctor. Right now, the insurance companies have control. They tell you when you can go, what you're approved for, all of these things. And Obamacare was just a complete flop. And so many people didn't sign up for that said they were going to, because it was a nightmare. Our premiums went up, and there's one or two healthcare choices on the open exchange. So people are it didn't work. And so we really need to address that. So I have people talk to me about that. I have, there's veteran issues that people want improved and streamlined, especially in the mental health sector. There's not enough providers in certain categories. Our children, our kids is a big reason why I'm doing this. They're the future of our country. And with our education system here, we're last. So, and you can talk about the sexual education program now that they have in our system and how graphic it is. The ideology that they're shoving down our kids' throats, the sex trafficking. I plan to do a lot when it comes to that, because the federal budget for that is not near what it should be. They have 12 to 13 million that they use to combat a multi-billion-dollar industry. So, yeah, and our border. People talk to me about all kinds of things that we need to address. So, I plan to get to each one of them.
Yeah, that's a huge one. And I look at those issues as it's almost like common sense, bipartisan things, and it's if we get enough people in there that have the right ideas, because I think our party as a whole, we have the right ideology. We just need the right pieces in place in the right positions, whether it's Senate or Congress at the national level, so we can kind of get things done. Because I think for far too often, even some of the Republicans that some of the states elected put out there, they're not doing enough, it seems, to kind of fight for the right ideas. It's almost like, okay, I made it, I'm in Washington, D.C., and now I'm just going to kind of ease off the gas a little bit and kind of fit in versus, being that person that's going to try to affect the real change that we need. So I take it that you're going to be taking a lead on that should you get up there. So talking about veterans issues, like you brought up just a minute ago, obviously we have in my estimation, it's a systemic problem with in our culture. Our attitude, not only toward our elders, but especially like our elder veterans in our communities, oftentimes are left out. That's why we're seeing, problems with homeless veterans, things like that. What practical steps do you think can be done at the federal level to help alleviate some of that?
I've talked about some of this, and I believe it's a reprioritization. We need to reprioritize our issues here and things that are really important to us. There's tons of money. They've taken so much money from us for taxes, and it seems like those dollars need to be reappropriated to where they're needed most. A lot of that to the trafficking, a lot of that to the veterans. We shouldn't have homeless veterans on our streets for what they did, for us in this country. I realize that some of them want to be on the streets, but the ones that don't, why are we sending billions of dollars overseas when we could use that money for our own people, for our own kids that are hungry, for our own veterans that are on the street? And there's just so much more, and I believe that it's not for lack of funds. It's for where the stuff, and there's so much wasteful spending. You've seen these spending packages and what they put in there. So-and-so has to have a building or a freeway named after them, or whatever, a library, whatever it is. Do we really need that? Do they really need something with their name on it? Do we need to spend millions on stuff like that? Probably not.
When you get to the meat and potatoes of the spending packages, you're seeing like an infrastructure bill or whatever they want to call it after they pack in all the different pork and the special projects. You're right. Seeing like 10, 12, 13% of it actually going toward what it's supposed to go toward, and we can do better than that.
When they're sending hundreds of millions of dollars to the Middle East for gender studies on our dime, that's our money. That to me is unnecessary. That stuff is wasteful spending. those types of dollars, and just like the fraud, what we were talking about, those dollars that are wasted, it shouldn't be. We could do so much better, I believe. And, these career politicians, they've been in there for decades. So all we have to do is go back and look at what is their performance. If you had a job and you were performing poorly and causing the company to lose money, like they're causing our country to lose money, you'd be fired, right? When you spend more on your credit card than what you can afford, pretty soon you go bankrupt. You can only spend so much. So the fact that they have put us, our kids, into debt the way they have, something has to give, something has to change.
Yeah, I agree totally. Yeah, when it comes to the, for instance, I know there's a myriad of different points of view that you can handle the conflict going in, Ukraine versus Russia. And when I think about the billions of dollars that are spent there, I won't say interfering, because I realize some of those issues are important. What is your take on America's role in general, as far as seemingly being the main peacekeeper, the police force of the world, or for lack of a better term? How do you see that? And do you see that as something that needs to be scaled down? Or do you see that as something that we need to take more of an active role, or keep it at the same level that it's at? Just kind of wanted to know your take on that, because like we're talking about with our tax money, all these groups that are involved with NATO, these other countries, we still have the lion's share, or at least a proportionally higher amount of our resources that are going toward that. And by resources, I mean our hard-earned money that Americans are paying for that. Just kind of want to know your take.
Yeah. Well, I think that, yes, we are the peacekeepers, and we always have been. And we are looked at as, we're the land of the free, home of the brave. You see our guys coming, and that, they're coming to protect you. But I don't think that our involvement in every single conflict is necessary. With the Ukraine issue in particular, I haven't seen any meaningful peace talks coming from our administration to get Putin and Zelensky on the same page and get this thing taken care of. All they keep doing is writing check after check after check, and we keep sending our money. But has there been anything accounted? I've not seen any accountability on that.
Yeah, I think that's a distinction probably between the prior administration. When Trump was in charge, this whole situation would be completely different. Mm-hmm. There would be this pressure. There would be our leadership making it a point to bring people to the table to figure this out. And like you said, I just think that they're not doing that.
No, I don't think so. There should have been efforts way a long time ago, before we sent all that money, to see what we could do to bring peace. And I think if you take that approach each time to where there's a conflict, we're probably going to be dealing with China and Taiwan before too long. And I believe if you take the approach of trying to have a peaceful arrangement rather than just go into war or conflict, I think that that's better. And I would always look at what's best for America, what's best for our people. So when I'm looking at all foreign policy issues, I'm going to be looking at that through the lens of American citizens and through the people that I represent. And I'm going to say to myself, what is the best for us? So we don't need to send our military out there in harm's way for no reason.
Yeah, and piggybacking on some of that, what we can see when we look at really the reality of the world that we live in, with our border being so unsecured, mm-hmm. with fentanyl making its way into our communities, on top of the possible child trafficking, sex trafficking, all the bad things that happen when you have an unsecured border. And then if you just look at the numbers, because I'm a numbers person, and like a famous correspondent we got like Fox recently had said at some interviews with some potential presidential candidates, over 100,000 people in America are dying every year because of what's happening basically by not having our southern border secured, versus, well, how many people have been murdered or killed due to Russians directly. And that really made me think, and it's, you're talking about a handful of people whose lives have been destroyed by actual Russian activity versus the drug epidemic and the sex trafficking epidemic that's going on, and how we as Americans or our government is budgeting money for each. It just seems like they're trying, like you said, as an American, I don't really think that affects my day-to-day life as much as, I mean, the Ukraine-Russia situation as much as what's happening in the southern border.
Well, there's a whole lot of things wrong with that. You've got the fentanyl, you've got the trafficking, and you have these illegals being shipped all over our country. We're paying for that. So that's some more wasteful spending. Let them remain in Mexico, like Trump had in place, and that was working just fine. We need to finish our border, and they have completely let an invasion happen into our country, and I call it treason. To me, that's treason. And I know that's a strong word, some people say, but you know what? Those are the facts. And 2 million children are estimated to go missing every single year. There are 6 to 8 million kids that are sex slaves around the world that they estimate. America is the number one consumer of that. I don't know if you've seen that Sound of Freedom movie, but I encourage you to see it, and I encourage your listeners to see it, because it really puts that in perspective. And it takes courage to watch something that is so evil, but those are the numbers and those are the facts. And the fact that we are not, jumping up and down from the rooftops and doing something about this is beyond me. These kids, what if it were your kids? What if it were my kids? And it's horrific what happens to these kids. 2 to 5-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds are raped multiple times a day. They use these kids and make so much money. They're just a commodity. And slavery is alive and well around this world. And people don't realize how bad that it is.
And I think that's an indictment on our legacy media, on our reporting, on how our news sources are actually conducting themselves. I've never seen a point in our country where it's become so blindly, you can call it partisan, but I call it's just basic deceit by omission. So they're derelict at their job, the media at large. And I know the landscape's changing. There's less emphasis on the main network media and even cable news, which I think is a good thing, because how else are we going to get the right scoop? But I think what we have to fight the war on 2 fronts, policy-wise, but also just to convey that message to the masses and to get the media on board so they can actually do their job. Because if they were doing their job, it wouldn't take a movie like that, although it's a great movie, I hear, to actually shed light on it, because our media would be doing that.
Right.
So that's a war I think that we as conservatives are battling. We're actually battling with the media and progressive ideology, Marxism, and all that stuff. So it's a battle, and I think our candidates, they have to be really ready to get to work. So I appreciate where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, for sure. They definitely protect the left. They obviously protect Biden and his son and all of their alleged criminal activity, all the evidence that has come forth. Do you see them, do any kind of news stories on that? No, they're talking about Trump and all these ridiculous indictments. And they're so one-sided, and they just outright lie. They lie, but they don't want to bring the trafficking to, why wouldn't they want to bring that to light? Ask yourself that question, and then you go down a rabbit hole, and it's very scary why they wouldn't want to bring that up. So number one is awareness, and that's with any subject, awareness, and then you figure out a plan and you act on it. And that's where we're at with this country. If we intend to save our country and have our Constitution in place and our rights, they want to take away our rights at every turn, right? So if we don't get together and step in to save our kids in this country, there's not going to be a country left.
And I find it, my wife and I were talking about it, and hearing other pundits talk about it on the national level, it seems like this is an issue that I've only personally, and I could be wrong, maybe in my purview, I only see Donald Trump having spoken out as a presidential candidate to speak out on that issue. I feel like the Republicans, whether they're in the Senate or the Congress or even some of the other candidates that are running, I don't think they're doing enough to really speak out on that issue. And that's another reason why I have to kind of, and I don't want to think this way, like, you always hear from people, it's a uniparty, it's this, it's that, it's not really Republican or Democrat, they're all playing on the same team. I think it's time that we really need to battle for those distinctions. We need to distinguish ourselves as Republicans and not go in there to just always be reaching across the aisle, because as we're reaching across the aisle, I said it before, like they're reaching out to slap us right in the face. And we don't understand that we're in a real battle. Mm-hmm. And some of our leaders are they're not stepping it up. So what ways do you think you as a candidate, or even if you do get elected, can you help some of these folks kind of step up their game on our side of the aisle, for instance?
You lead by example, right? So I would just say I'm very good at getting people together and what I do for a living, right? I'm great with people because I love people, and I think that shows. So I've really enjoyed my job, and I negotiate for people, and I advocate for them, and I mediate, and I bring two sides together for a common goal. And being in the Senate and having to work with all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds, religions, and having that experience that I've done for so long, that just comes naturally to me. So when you have that type of a personality and those skills, you can get a lot more done. And when you're leading the charge and you're showing by example what should be important to us, where those priorities should be, then you have other people and they watch and they want to follow along because you're being successful and you're making a difference and you're representing the people the way you should, and then they want to jump on board too.
Yeah. It reminds me of that phenomenon like what you're talking about when Trump first kind of came out of the we used to not in the public eye, but when he came out as a candidate, everybody was critiquing his style. This is going to hurt him. All the political wonks were always miscalculating his step here. All that Rosie O'Donnell comment really is going to tank his campaign, and it kind of did the opposite. He kind of got a bump off of it. Mm-hmm. It's almost as if we have so many people in leadership positions, no matter what side of the aisle that you're on, that don't want to try anything unless they know that it's going to work. They live in this pragmatic world of maybe too many political consultants or whoever it might be telling them this is the way you have to do it.
Right.
This is the way it's always been done. And we need, I guess, for lack of a better word, more maverick type people to kind of say, this is my conviction and this is what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. And if it's the right thing to do, when I was telling my wife, there's good choices, there's bad choices. There's the right thing to do and there's the wrong thing to do. And if you live that way in your actual, political career as well as your regular life, that I don't think you can't go wrong. And mm-hmm. Some of our politicians, they wear two faces.
Yeah, exactly. I've talked a lot about and people tell me, you are yourself. You're the same way with people, outside as you are with people on camera or whatever it is. You just have to be yourself, because people aren't dumb. People can look at you and they can be with you and they know that you're being genuine. They can tell. And a lot of times these politicians, they want to put on this face or they want to put on this filter, and you can tell. A lot of people can tell a mile away. And I'm tired of that kind of politician. I'm tired of the rhetoric. I'm tired of the people that are there to just serve themselves, enrich themselves, and line their pockets. And then they forget about us back at home. They forget about we the people, and they forget about who elected them and voted for them. So I really I want to represent the state for the right reasons. I don't care about the name, the power, the fame, the money. I don't care. None of that means anything. That does not motivate me. What motivates me is to have a genuine, real candidate in there that's going to represent the state. And I will not sell the people of the state down the river like we've seen the establishment in DC do.
Yeah. There was a time in Nevada where, the onus was Republicans get out there. We need to control, at the state level, the governorship, the assembly, the Senate. And I think the Republican voters kind of did their part. They actually had that done in the state of Nevada. I know we're talking about, state politics and not national, but we finally gave them everything that they wanted. And what ended up happening, 7-8 years ago now, they ushered in some of the biggest tax hikes in Nevada history, for instance. Mm-hmm. So it's always, if we could just win this, if we could just get a majority in the Senate, by all accounts, regardless of how anybody feels about election problems, having semi-unsecured elections, different things like that, there should have probably been a bigger, they call it, the red tsunami, the red wave, whatever you want to call it. We should have done better, and I think that's an indictment on some of our leaders, even in my own party. So with that being said, we throw around the word conservative a lot, or Republicanism. So if someone asks you, what does being conservative, like what does that mean to you, for instance, if someone just asks you, kind of explain yourself, if you're conservative, how you would define that?
It's kind of personal responsibility, right? You work for what you earn, and that is, you're a hard worker. We've got our Constitution. We defend that. We uphold it. We're fiscally responsible. And although we wouldn't really know that by where we are now, but the conservative values, I believe, they're American values. We want to preserve our family and our right to worship and all of these things, and protect our Second Amendment. That's so important, because we get rid of that and they try and take that from us, we're in big trouble. But I believe that we stand up for America and we stand up for the people, and those things are so important.
Like you said, I think sometimes people get in this little bubble, whether it's Carson City at the state level or whether it's Washington D.C. on the national level, and they have these blinders on. They kind of forget why they're there, mm-hmm. and who put them there, right, and who they represent. And it's not about cutting deals and doing this and doing that. It's about representing your constituents, mm-hmm. and it's while still maintaining your conservative belief system. So I know we touched on the social aspect of conservatism a little bit. I'm a staunch believer myself. Just to give you a little bit of my background, is that although I'm super socially conservative, I'm super fiscally conservative, I believe there's a limitation to what the federal government and even the state government can do to enforce those things. Like I always tell my wife, I think it's a conservative value to hold the door open, mm-hmm. for an older lady carrying groceries, mm-hmm. so it doesn't slam in her face. It's not illegal to be a jerk and let that door slam. So the government doesn't really have a role in that situation to go write up a new law saying it's illegal to not hold the door open. But so in the broader sense, like how would you reconcile your social conservative belief system with really still maintaining that freedom and liberty that our Constitution kind of provides for us, so that our federal government's not overstepping where they shouldn't?
I believe the federal government, I've said this a million times, is way too overinflated. They have completely turned into something it never intended. It was never supposed to be that way. The power was supposed to be with the states. So to unravel some of that stuff in the federal government and shrink the federal government, we could do it. It's going to take an overhaul of the system. And it's going to take a lot of Americans saying, okay, we have given you power, now we're going to take it back. Because ultimately in the Constitution, that power remains in the people. So on the federal level, yes, that has just gotten way too big. And as far as socially, I am a live and let live type of person. I don't want to tell somebody what to do with their body, what to do, these vaccine mandates that I will never stand for or support a vaccine mandate or a mask mandate for that matter. But I just don't, I believe in medical freedom, bodily autonomy, and people, they have to make choices for themselves. regardless of whatever it is. And that's not my place to tell someone what to do with their life. Pick a subject. There's a lot of controversial subjects out there right now, but I am responsible for myself, for my body, and what comes out of my mouth. I'm not responsible for what other people, that's their decision. So I believe in liberty, and I believe in freedom.
I've kind of come full circle with some of my certain beliefs as well. So as a social conservative, I remember when Nevada was kind of changed to allow same-sex marriage and things like that. So I believe the government's role, although I'm not a fan of that. I believe the Bible speaks pretty clearly on marriage between a man and a woman, but at the same time, being someone who values freedom and liberty, and the freedom of association and the freedom of individuals to engage in contracts with one another, I think who am I, if I was a government official, to go ahead and get in the middle of that? Because in my view, marriage is a covenant between a man and a woman, so it's not a contract per se. But the Nevada law, when it changed, when the Constitution changes and allows it, it's more contractual. And I don't think the government needs to really get involved with contracts so much between individuals. So in that regard, I always tell folks that I'm more of although I'm a social conservative, I'm more practically, I guess, a little bit libertarian leaning when it comes to how the government's role is with that stuff. Because if they start setting a precedent by getting too involved in our day-to-day lives, in our bedrooms, in our other choices like that, then who knows where it's going to stop? Because the federal government if you keep feeding it, it just keeps growing. The bureaucracy will keep growing.
It already has. Yeah. Just look at the last 100 years and where we are. Just that example that you brought up. So just because I have a certain belief doesn't mean I have to put that on someone else. And just because they have a certain belief that I may not disagree with, I don't have to believe in that. I don't have to accept that. Everyone has a right to live their life and make those choices for themselves. And you're right, the government shouldn't have their hands involved in that. They have way overstepped their bounds as far as that goes. And a lot of people look at marriage as not only the contractual thing under a law or state law or federal law, but you have the Bible and you have different religions and they have different sets of rules and values, and people look at it as a biblical marriage. So there's all kinds of situations there, and I have no room to judge anyone else, and I have no room to tell anyone else that what they're going to do with their personal life.
Because honestly, there's so many defined roles of the federal government where they need to be involved. So we don't need them poking their noses, so to speak, in all these other gray areas where they seemingly always want to get involved, whether it's the mandates, the masks, the debacle with Dr. Fauci, and the bad advice that, unfortunately, Donald Trump was obviously taking for far too long. Just to concentrate on what we're about, right? So securing our own country, preserving life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is ultimately their job. And on those grounds, I think they're failing all of it. Mm-hmm. So why not just focus on, just how you do with your budget, right? You're going to knock out your mortgage or your rent first, your car payment, your electric bill, before you start worrying about fancy dinners or all these other expenses. Right. Or putting your kid with, piccolo lessons or whatever it is. You have to concentrate on that first. And I think that's where we've lost focus. We're everywhere. Mm-hmm. We're in everybody's affairs. We're in Ukraine. We're doing things in the Middle East. We still got bases in places, I think, where we might not need them. But it's because that's how it's always been. That's how they keep doing it. And
it's like you have your own bills to pay, but before you pay your own bills, you're paying your whole entire neighborhood. Right. And you're sending money to all the neighbors, and you're forsaking your own family and your own bills. I mean, pretty much that's what they've done and what they're doing. So
and then they come to us saying, "Oh, we don't have
we need
money
more
for
right.
our main bills. So we need to raise your taxes or whatever it is." Mm-hmm. So. I don't know, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here. I don't know what your situation is as far as this topic goes, but I find it super important that when I'm talking to candidates or when I'm considering voting for candidates, and many people agree with me, in the state of Nevada, there's what's called a Taxpayer Protection Pledge. Americans for Tax Reform kind of puts that out there to kind of vet candidates. What is your feeling on that? if you haven't already signed or thought one way or the other, is there a way that you're leaning on that? If you were to have that presented to you, that you would be willing to sign a taxpayer protection pledge, or?
Yes, definitely on that, and also the term limit.
Good.
Yes, because we see what no term limits, we see the result of that, and I believe that those pledges are very important. And I mean, I feel like, and a lot of voters, they feel like they're taxed to death already. I mean, look at what we're paying at the gas pump and the grocery store and all of these things, and people are struggling. And I think that they forget at that level, they forget how much Americans are struggling. And I know what that's like. I've been a single mom. I've been single for 16 years. And I know what that's, and I've been self-employed. And I went through the worst housing crisis in our state's history. And going through that was very scary, because when you don't know how you're going to pay your bills the next month or feed your kids, I know what that's like. And I'm not rich. I'm not wealthy. And I can relate to people that struggle and don't know how, and being self-employed, you don't get that check every 2 weeks. You get that check when you are working and when you have that business. So it's kind of like a double whammy, being single and then not having that steady paycheck, and you figure it out and you have to budget. So in that sense, I'm more conservative when I have to sit there and budget, and I will be very cognizant of that and very aware of what that looks like to the everyday average American that's out there trying to feed their kids and pay their bills. So I'm very much in touch with that.
Yeah, so what I hear even from our own elected officials or pundits or politicians that I kind of disagree with, when they say, well, like, I'll give you an example. In Nye County, they're reviewing the possibility of adding a diesel tax, and I've heard some of the rationale being, well, all the gasoline tax folks are paying a little bit extra for gasoline. We should charge these other people, the extra tax to make it fair. And when I look at it logically, it's like, if you look at taxes as something kind of aversive like I do, it's like, okay, the government slaps you in the face to tax the gas folks. And now in order to make it fair, you want to slap the face of the diesel folks. Mm-hmm. When the reality of it is, the solution should be, why don't you just cut the tax to if you want to make things fair, cut the gas tax and then level the playing field. Don't harm someone else for the sake of fairness. And when I hear that coming from my own side, that argument, it kind of like detests me, because not as many candidates as you think sign the taxpayer protection pledge, because they feel like, well, there could be a situation where we have to raise the fee for this, or there could be an emergency. And I'm thinking, what kind of emergency are you going to solve by adding a nickel a gallon to diesel tax in an emergency? That's not a plausible solution anyway. But what they're doing is they want to keep that ace in the hole, so to speak, so that they can use that as leverage if they have to cut deals or if they have to make something happen once they're elected, to kind of play the game. And my way of thinking is just put your cards out on the table now and just say you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And then I can trust you. And then now we have a record of it, and we can hold our officials accountable.
Yeah, hold their feet to the fire, because you hear all the kinds of campaign promises, and then they get there and they're like, what promises? Right. And they forget. But as far as that goes, it's not a tax problem. It's a spending problem, and it's an appropriation problem. And like I said, there can be a whole lot cut out of that federal government. We pay enough taxes. We pay more taxes than what we should. And Trump really gave us a break and lowered those taxes, and he did really good for the American people. And everybody was having more money in their pocket at the end of the year. And I think that was a great thing to do. People feel relief, and they feel, they can go out and they can spend more money, and that just helps the country. You're buying more goods and services, and you're going on vacations, and you're doing different things because you have more money. So people are more willing to spend, and that just turns a good and creates a good economy. The other thing, we should be drilling. Let's become energy independent again. Why can't we? We were, right? And when Biden cut off all of that, the pipeline, and cut those jobs, and then stopped drilling in a lot of places and stopped the land leases, and all of that has a domino effect. So when we started with that, and then we had the supply chain, shorted, all of these issues, it just kind of compounded on each other. And then all of a sudden we had runaway inflation and prices went up because we don't have enough goods going on. We don't have enough oil being produced.
Right.
Let's get going on that stuff.
Yeah, and I would even augment that with the demonization, for instance, of nuclear energy. So we're talking about clean energy opportunities, things like that. Why has an issue like that been just not? It's been shelved for so long, and in reality, barring some instances that happened in the 1980s, we all know the big one that happened. Relatively secure process and able to give abundant clean energy. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like none of our officials are really speaking into that either. So
you know why? You know why? I think they want to push their climate crisis.
Right.
They want to push their agenda. They want to push everybody to the electric vehicles. And they want complete control and domination. Of course, the World Economic Forum, they say so. They talk about it. They're honest. And people, I would encourage you to listen, because they are not hiding what they want to do. They are not hiding their agenda. So when you go to all electric and you go to digital currency, that is complete control. They can turn on and off these things at will. So the nuclear energy, I believe, accounts for 20% of our electricity in the U.S. So and it's clean. So why is that not being pushed some more? So I believe there's a lot at play there. There's always the behind the scenes. There's someone getting the money or pocketing this or that and making these deals that don't benefit the American people. But I don't go along with this climate crisis. I don't believe it's a crisis. I have read so many articles from experts, and I've read both sides. And I talked about this a week or so ago. And I believe it's all about an agenda, and it's about control. Yeah, we need to take care of our planet, and we need to take care of things like that, and because that's important. And we shouldn't be wasteful, and we shouldn't be destructive. But as far as what they're implementing and they want to do, I see beyond that. A lot of people, they're not as involved in politics, so they don't see this stuff. But when I look at the end game, it's not good. And I've read so many studies that say we can spend all these billions of dollars. We're spending billions on this climate crisis that I believe they've created for their own agenda. We can spend it over the next 100 years. We can spend billions of dollars, and it wouldn't affect the climate more than 2 degrees.
All that emphasis, and they're willing to possibly tank the economy of the greatest nation that's ever existed, based upon a wager like that may or may not even help at all with climate change, or whether the Earth's getting a tiny bit hotter, every decade or whatever it is. They've
all predicted, the world's gonna. You remember AOC? What was it, 2013 or 12 years? And it was Al Gore, and it's the Greta Thunberg, or all these people have come for decades and decades. They've all made these predictions. Not one has come true.
Yeah.
And the rich keep buying homes on oceanfront, and if the water level was going to raise that much, they wouldn't be buying millions.
Doesn't stop Obama from his latest purchases, right?
Right. So
sea level rising.
Yeah, we all know. We see their game. We see, through all of that. And I'm not saying be irresponsible, and I'm not saying that we don't need to pay attention to that. But what I am saying is that there's more to this, and it clearly is an agenda they're pushing.
Because on balance, I would argue that Americans are good stewards of their environment. When given their freedom and their liberty, we tend to be good stewards of our environment. I mean, you look no further than rural areas, kind of like here, and even further as you go into Nevada, preserving, the landscape. preserving our public spaces without being compelled at the point of a gun by the government to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at even in Las Vegas, where that's my hometown, and I know that's where you live as well, but if you look at the studies that show water usage, for instance, over the past 10, 20 years, as much as the city has actually grown, the greater Las Vegas area, for that matter, has grown, we use in Las Vegas less water than we did years and years and years ago. So if people are given the right information, if they're kind of not compelled necessarily by the government to conserve water, and they see the reason behind it and the rationale behind it, they make the good decisions. But at the same time, the normal everyday folks are the ones that are constantly being guilted almost, and things can be used as control. Water, I know we were talking before we started filming a little bit, I heard you guys talking, but sometimes that's used as an issue where maybe it's not as dire, although, we have serious issues with Lake Mead, and even out here, we have to conserve and stuff like that. But does the government kind of overstep its bounds and make it more of an issue to control, just like they're doing on a grand scale with clean energy?
Of course, sure they do.
Yeah.
They absolutely do. There is always some kind of an agenda. And I have said a million times, we need to overhaul DC. Look at who we have representing us and look at how effective they are. They're really not. And I know a lot of Republicans and Democrats, we have so many people that have gone to independent and nonpartisan because the Republicans and Democrats feel like they've been forsaken by their party.
Yeah.
And that whole system, people are tired of that. People are tired of feeling like they have no representation. People are tired of feeling like they've been sold out. They just want some real Americans that will represent them for the right reasons in DC. And for the most part, I would say there are some incredible patriots in Congress that are fighting for us. And they do stand up for us, and they are doing it for the right reason. And you can see that they're fighting for us, and I commend each one of them. But I would say in large part, there are those, they're not really representing us. They're the establishment. Mm-hmm. And when that establishment government comes in and backs a certain candidate or wants a certain candidate elected, that to me is a red flag. And that is the stuff we need to pay attention to. Yeah. We need to vet our candidates.
And I would argue there's some endorsements out there on a national level that candidates in your position might not be that all too eager to garner. Won't name names of anybody, maybe even within our own party. But there's sometimes, okay, well, if I'm coming about my campaign like this, I don't really want the support of this person who, by all accounts, is maybe more part of the problem than any kind of solution.
Well, I have heard in recent weeks from a lot of people that they won't support a certain candidate because of those establishment endorsements, because they don't trust those people. Yeah. They don't trust the ones handing out the endorsements, right, because they just want a candidate they can control. They want that puppet. So they're going to pick the weak one that they're bought and paid for. So I would just caution people to really do your homework, vet the candidate, see what their background is about, why are they doing what they're doing. And if you can say to yourself, I can trust that person, they are going to represent me. They're going to take my agenda, my concerns to Washington. And if you can answer that question and you say, that's the candidate I trust, vote for that candidate.
I agree wholeheartedly. And we also touched on, or you mentioned earlier in our talk here about one of the things that is probably needed. You mentioned term limits, for instance. And in the current situation, it's very difficult for me to rationalize why the existing Senate or Congress would ever want to vote themselves, basically.
That's the problem.
A deadline for their employment.
Right.
So barring any miracle with that, Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution provides for convention of states, for instance. Mm-hmm. And it's a little bit of a hot topic, even within our own party, our own state party, and our own platform as Republicans in Nevada. There's many on our side that don't really adhere to that. In fact, a platform that I refused to sign when I ran last time, because in the platform it said that we do not support an Article 5 Convention of States. I see no other way that we would ever enact term limits unless it begins at the state level. We garner the 3/4 of the states to ratify that and ultimately change the Constitution and get it embedded. And I think that solves a lot of the problems that you're talking about. There'll be a lot less motivation to have puppet masters if they know they don't have that person in there for 30 years and the person's limited to 10 or 12 years.
Absolutely. You're going to have people run that are running for the right reasons, because when they know they can't take advantage of the American people and get wealthy and get all these things, that motivation, that's going to weed those people out. And we've never had the people decide on a constitutional amendment. So having that in place, and again, having the power within the people in the states, then we might be able to get that done. But no, you're right. I don't think I don't think any of them would vote for that, honestly. Yeah, they'd be voting to fire themselves, but anyway.
So that's one of the pledges that's also out there on the campaign trail. I know that was one of the first ones I was quick to sign back in my day. But before we get going too much further, just wanted to ask you ways that our audience might be able to either help you or connect with you during the campaign process here, if you wanted to share some of that information.
So my website is phillipsfornevada.com, and that's the number 4. So phillipsfornevada.com, and you can connect with me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Getter and Truth, and it's all Phillips for Nevada, the number 4. And we were talking earlier, we have just launched virtual town hall meetings. So, and I'm so excited about this because this whole thing, it's all about the people, right? It's about the voter. And I want to hear and talk to as many people as I can. And, you know, trying to get around the whole state, it's very difficult to do all of that and work and, you know, all the things that I'm involved in. But so we launched these, and we're going to have 2 a month. And if we need to add more, we're going to add more. We can have hundreds on these Zoom links. So if you go to my website, you can hit the register town hall button, sign up, and the day before the meeting is scheduled, we'll send you a Zoom link and you can join. Ask me any question you want. Tell me what your concerns are. And this is statewide, and even people outside of the state, if they want to join the conversation and say, you know what, because on a Senate level, we take over the Senate, what we're voting on affects the country. But I want people to be involved. I want to have those discussions. I want to hear, and I want the people to talk and tell me what their agenda is. What are their concerns? I will take those, and I'll answer any question. I told you before we started, I'm not afraid to answer any question. I'm an open book, and people can come on there, and I'm super excited. Our first one is next Thursday, August 10th. It's at 6 o'clock. And it's for an hour. We're going to start with an hour, and people can connect with a U.S. Senate candidate virtually face-to-face for an hour. How many times do you have that close of access and that quick of access without even leaving your home? So I think it's going to be successful. I think it's going to be awesome. And I think people are going to love it, and it's just going to catch on. And I can reach so many more people that way.
You might have some copycatters out there.
We'll see, but we said it here first.
Yeah. So we'll also put a link on our, and when this airs on YouTube, listeners, viewers, Rumble, the link for that will be on our website. Again, that's Phillips for Nevada, number 4, phillipsfornevada.com. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you coming in to shed some light here in Pahrump, actually, because I mean, as a state candidate, obviously you're going to be hitting almost all the counties, if not all the counties, to go meet with the voters and stuff. And I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to chat with us a little bit. Stephanie, I wish you a lot of luck in the campaign trail. I think you're definitely on the right foot. And is there anything else you wanted to talk to the viewers about before I close this out? I don't want to cut you off.
Well, since we're in Pahrump, I just wanted to say really quick, because we were talking about this before too. I believe I'm going to be here September 9th on that Saturday morning to talk to the Nye County party. So I will put out flyers for that on social media when that gets confirmed, but also I'm having a fundraiser here in Pahrump on Veterans Day. We're going to honor our veterans and celebrate the Marine's birthday, and I'll have more information when that comes out as well. But yeah, I'm going to be spending a lot of time here.
Gotcha. So just as a reminder to any viewers and listeners, if you are a registered Republican, you are welcome at the meeting. So that's the only requirement at that meeting that she's talking about, that Stephanie's talking about on the 9th of September, because they do verify that through credentials when you show up. You don't have to be a voting member to attend a meeting like this, so by all means, make your way down. It's here in Pahrump Valley, and Mance, I guess, are the closest cross streets to that building. But links for that information on that can also be on the site. So again, thank you for talking with us, Stephanie, and on behalf of the Nevada Patriot podcast, God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Tell a friend and join us next time. After you catch your breath, check out the NevadaPatriot.com for more content, advertising opportunities, and to give listener feedback. That website again is the NevadaPatriot.com. Until next time, Patriots, stay American.